Okay, guys, we are here back again for yet another episode of the Fish Podcast. It's me, Felix, here with Sean, and today we have a guest. Sean, who's our guest?
Yeah, today we have a guest who is getting bigger and bigger in the Netherlands. Mostly known for his big catfish that he caught from a float tube, but also he does a lot of really cool videos on his YouTube channel, and he catches a lot of big pike. So I thought he would be a perfect guest for the Fish Podcast, and just ask him anything about catfishing in particular. We do a lot of pike stuff on this channel, on the podcast, but I think Tobias is the man to ask about catching catfish from a float tube. So yeah,
that's very kind of you, Sean.
Welcome, man. Welcome.
Good to have you. Yeah.
Welcome, Tobias.
Thanks a lot, Felix. Good to be here.
And nice, man. We heard you just cracked the beer, getting ready, sitting down. You know, it's how it's supposed to be. A Monday evening, doing some podcasts. So where are you situated exactly in Holland?
Right now, we're in Spijkenisse. It's a small town that's next to Rotterdam.
All right. Okay.
Rotterdam.
Rotterdam in the house.
Yeah, zeker. All right. Cool. Hey, the first thing that came to mind is why catfishing? I mean, I think for us in the Netherlands, it's a bit more common. But I think I have to look a bit towards Felix. But catfishing in Sweden is
you're not even allowed to fish for them in Sweden.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, they're protected. Yeah, they're protected. So the only way you can catch them is there's just a handful of river systems and lakes that have a good population of catfish, where they've been protected and where they are, dominant as a species, where they grow big quite fast. So some of the guys that do pike fishing in these river systems or lakes, smaller ones in the south part of Sweden, they accidentally catch sometimes on big pike stuff. But you can't target them at this point.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's the same here in the Netherlands.
But did
except for the protected part. But
yeah, exactly. But they were protected until a couple of years ago, right?
True. Yeah, true.
Yeah. They officially allowed us to fish for catfish. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe more, but still. Okay. Well, why catfishing? What makes it so special to us?
Like the idea of catfishing started off when my buddy and my fellow kingfisher Sonar told me about his catfishing trips in Spain. And on those particular guided trips, they were using a boat with like 6 or 7 or 8 static rods using live bait, and he was all psyched when he got home. And then I was like, imagine if we can do that over here using our float tube. That would be nice to do.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
awesome.
Because the power of those fish is incredible.
And it certainly is the biggest sport fish or biggest game fish out there in the Netherlands or in Europe.
They grow up to 2 meters plus, like I think recently they caught a new Dutch record. It's like 221 or something. Oh. But there has been stories about specimens that are over 250 in Holland. So
250?
Yeah.
Jesus. So you were just out for a new way to wakeboard with your float tube. That was the case.
Yeah, Sean, I'm the sporty type, so I was like, let's go.
Yeah,
let's go for a ride.
Yeah. Cool. Gee, but that looks. It sounds, when they go over towards 250 centimeters, that sounds like they are, reaching the potential of those fish in Spain, because on the Ebro Delta, I think you were talking about the Ebro or maybe some other system in Spain, but they are massive over there, and the Netherlands.
Are they planted in Netherlands as well? Because the fish in Ebro is planted, right?
I don't actually.
I think it was like a German scientist who thought it was fun to bring some fish in his car, and he smuggled them through the borders, and I think he put them down in Ebro.
I know that story.
Yeah,
he brought them in like in small water bottles. He caught them in like a small pond in Germany, because he was bored with the indigenous species on the Ebro Delta, and then he just every single trip that he went to Spain, he dropped those catfish into the Ebro Delta.
And they are the biggest ones today, because they can live for like 40 years or 30 years.
Yeah, some people are really pissed on him because they ate all the indigenous species, but some others are just really enthusiastic about the commercial side of the whole sport fishing thing. I think there's some video on YouTube where he's actually boasting about the fact that he brought all those catfish to Spain. So
yeah, but I think he's banned from entering Spain again. I think he's stuck in Germany.
They got his picture on with the customs.
Exactly. But is it the same in Holland, or do they actually have they thrived there, or how's the case that you have a good?
I think they just came from, because in the Netherlands we have a lot of rivers coming from all parts of Europe that flow into the ocean here.
Yeah, okay.
And I think they just migrated into a normal, natural way. And on the other hand, I do know that there are some native catfish populations on some certain areas in the Netherlands where catfish have there always has been a catfish population. And I know one story of maybe Tobias knows that story as well. There used to be a hatchery where they grew like a trout farm, but then a catfish farm. And some guy accidentally opened the water changing system, and then 700 plus small little catfish just just drained into a big canal in the center of the Netherlands, and then a big catfish population started to grow over there. So it's a mix of natural, that were already a native population, combined with catfish that came from the eastern parts of Europe. That's the most common theory, I think.
Okay, cool.
Really interesting.
All right.
Yeah, that's enough of the Wikipedia lesson. So
far,
tell us how you started off.
We're talking about I'm sorry.
Just tell us, Tobias. I actually Googled here fishing in Holland catfish, and the first thing that pops up on fishinginholland.nl is a guy in a float tube pulling in a catfish. Is that you? No?
Could be. I don't know. Maybe
it's like
I'll look it up.
I will send it. It's maybe it's grown since you brought that thing there, doing it for the first time. They're using like a worm rig thing with some spinner stuff on it with a lot of big worms.
Yeah.
Looks crazy. So how did you start? Do you remember your first time out on the water?
Yeah.
Was it successful? Take us through that day.
No, if you're a cat fisherman, you have to get used to blanking a lot, due to the low population that's over here in the Netherlands. So I was comfortable with the idea of blanking, but it was also new because, as Sean said, I'm a little bit spoiled with catching a lot of big pikes, perches, and zander as well. But I just had a plan in my head. I made a plan in my head. I was like, I'm sorry. There was something happening on the phone. Yeah, so I was making a plan, and I was like, I'll blank 10 or 12 or 50 times. It didn't even matter. I just wanted to start the whole catfish story. And I still remember the first time I went out. I think how long was it ago? Well, it was some time ago, and I at that time I didn't know how difficult the task would be because we saw like a buddy of mine, William, and I saw him catching all these huge predators, and I was like, yeah, let's go. So first time out, we bought a few heavy sinkers and some worms at a local tackle shop, and just using like regular pike rods, and we started targeting catfish, which was now to say a very bad idea, but at the time it all began over there. The mystery of targeting these like huge prehistoric like monsters with extreme power got me interested. So that was the first time. I didn't catch anything. I think for the first 8 or 10 times.
That's just so interesting hearing that. I think there's a lot of people trying something new or on the brink of bringing some new technique or a new species in the game, and they go out for 8-10 times, they will give up. But you continued to push. What made you go through all those zeroed out fishing sessions? What went through your mind at those times?
Fuck.
Fuck.
Fuck. because as I said, I'm a bit spoiled catching like large, but a lot of fishes. And at that time I was like, the game is on. I just wanted to be successful, and I want to have the catfishing experience which I saw with my buddies who were like catfishing for 10 years. But I'm a real, like in I'm sorry, I don't know the right words, but in my personal life, I'm a personal trainer. So I'm really result-based guy,
Yeah.
And so I made a plan, and I wanted to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So it didn't even matter how many times I would blank. I was just like, all right, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give it all, and I even like quit all the other types of fishing just to be more successful in catfishing, and that's pretty much the story how it all started.
I think that's a really good lesson to all of our listeners and other
I think so
followers,
too.
because it's really important to stay focused and keep the end goal in mind. And then you will have setbacks. Then you will have days that you won't catch anything, or have stuff that will do something with your motivation. But you have to keep on going, and that's also the thing with fishing for big pike or any other specimen. If you want to go for the really big fish, or you want to learn a new technique, then you gotta keep on going and keep on pushing yourself to learn and to evolve, and that's a really good mentality.
So Tobias, doing those, is it something you want to give to the listeners out there struggling with the same goal that you had? What should they think about to improve or succeed in the end game when it's a long hard way there? What would you say that they should think of or do?
I think you can reflect all the experience that you have with the other like fishing techniques or target species, and reflect that on catfishing, because some fishes are more common than others.
Mm-hmm.
So the task is more heavier to catch catfish. So you have to make a plan in your head and just stick with it. And don't forget to enjoy the whole fishing experience, because it's real quiet out there. There isn't any stress. You're in the water, and especially if you're in the belly boat, because you're actually one with the elements, because your legs are in the water.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like you have to enjoy, but also keep the target in mind. And the target at that time for me was to catch just one,
Yeah.
And so enjoy the ride, but keep your eyes on the prize, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
that's super cool.
That's really good. Yeah, and that's also what helped me with targeting big fish on difficult water systems, is that you have to stop looking at it as individual sessions, but you have to look at the bigger picture the entire time. So one blank session isn't just a blank session, it's just part of the bigger picture, a part of a bigger session in whole, just to get that big fish in a boat or in the belly boat or in a kayak.
I think that's a super interesting way of looking at it, actually. It's something that we brought along as well. We know in our fishing back home, what we do, that there will be a lot of slow sessions with no bite or no action at all. But we just accept them, we know for them are, and we know that eventually we'll have this, super day or super successful, outcome. And you can't look at it as one bad day and you'll add 10 bad days. It's a lot of preparations for one tremendously good day.
Yeah.
It adds up.
Yeah, true.
And was there anything specifically that you can point to when you look back to those sessions where you blanked the first time you tried it? And what was the key to success? Did you change anything, or did you change waters, or was it something in the technique you made adjustments to?
Yeah. Well, you have to learn. It's trial and error. So after 10 or 12 times of blanking, or I don't know the right word, but not catching anything, people tend to let their head down and then just switch on the fishing techniques or stuff like that. But at that time I knew the way I was fishing, it's actually the same way that my buddies fished. So I don't know, I can tell something about the gear, but At that time, I just used like heavy sinkers, and I was like switching with different weights, different depths. But I think the most important thing is to know the typical spots. You have to know if you're on the right spot. So at the first 10 or 12 times, I still believe that I wasn't on the right spot.
That's a cool thing there. How do you identify the right spots for, especially your way, fishing catfish? What is the key thing there?
Well, in Holland you have like typical catfishing spots. Due to the low population, they're not scattered all over the water. So you have to know those typical catfishing spots, and that just takes experience. You have to make a lot of meters, try different spots, and be sharp on your fish finder, because that's the biggest friend of catfishing. But I can tell you something about those typical catfishing spots, because you have to know that catfish are very sensitive when it comes to sunlight.
Okay.
So first of all, it all really depends on the type of water you're fishing. So if, for example, we're fishing something like the Maas, which is a huge clear water river, then you're looking for certain hot spots. But murky water, like let's say the Waal, also has the same hot spots, but the catfishes are more scattered over the water. So you are more likely to find them on various spots. A few examples of typical catfishing spots. I think deep holes and pits next to piers.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any piers, but due to the huge container ships and the heavy current, there are a lot of like small piers like cribs on Dutch rivers. For example, in certain areas there are piers every 25 meters you cross. And the current becomes more heavy near the tip of those piers, creating like deep holes inside these boxes. Even small difference, like 1 or 2 meters, is enough to create like a typical catfishing spot.
That's super interesting.
So and deep holes and pits next to piers are very good for catfishing.
And with your sounder or your sounder, is it for targeting bait fish, or is it to find the structure you use it?
Well, that's the strangest thing, because as long as I can remember, and Sean knows this, I've been fishing for pikes for as long as I can remember, and I loved pike fishing more than anything. I've been targeting big pikes for as long as I can remember. I remember being a little kid and used to bug my big brothers for weeks just to take me fishing, but I just love being outdoors, the excitement and the challenge to catch more and bigger fish. And at that time I didn't know that there was a more exciting way of fishing than pike fishing, and I was always using my sonar, and so I'm very used to using that sonar, targeting or looking bait fish, or like nice structures or places that you have been fishing before, so you know that there. But the typical thing with catfishing is that you use the sonar, but it's not for targeting bait fish, or like in 99% of the times. You look for those big signals, and that takes a lot of time to get to know these spots. But one of these spots is like, as I told, like deep holes or pits. I don't know how to call it. But also areas like where the river bends back and forth, creating deeper holes in the outside bend of the rivers. But also the same thing with pike fishing. You're looking for certain structures, so bridges, pillars, barrages, certain structures like overhanging trees or dead branches in the water. Those are those typical hot spots, and if you know those hot spots, then it becomes a more easier task to catch those big monsters. Let's say experience and knowledge are required to be successful in Holland.
Exactly, yeah. But do you with pike in a lot of situations you tend to look for the bait fish? I'm also more of a structure guy. I like to look for structure which I know a pike will be on. Judging by what you told us now, that's similar with catfish. Only catfish stay in those deeper holes and are more, more into dodging sunlight and not really enthusiastic about sunlight. But what my image is, or my ideas about catfishing as well, is that you look for your sonar and you can actually see them rise up on your sonar going towards your bait. Right, that's one of the most exciting factors with how you fish for catfish, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, buddy. It's the most important thing. You have to know if they're there. And if you have that experience, like from earlier or other years, that you've caught a lot of catfishes over there, then you know. So it's not specifically necessary to see those like signals. But to me, because I haven't had the experience for more than 5 years. So I'm searching for those like thumb thick signals on the fish finder, on the sonar, and that's when the game begins. Yeah.
Cool. What's just a fun question for our listeners out there? What's the biggest catfish you caught in the Netherlands? Because you talked about a fish in with the guys that stay a bit off social media that have caught fish over towards 250 centimeters. What's the biggest one you caught in the Netherlands?
60 centimeters. No. No. My PR or PB is 195.
Oh, 100. Is that the one you posted recently on Instagram? I'll put a video on. We could put some links of stuff in this podcast and on.
We recently posted those on Instagram.
Oh, that was a cool photo with you fighting a big catfish. Yeah.
Wow, man, it was.
Yeah.
I think the picture that you used to.
On my Instagram just a few minutes ago.
Yeah. I think is it where the background is blurred a little bit?
No, I just posted one with you lying in the water with between all patches of grass and anything close to the rocks.
Yeah. That was a 195. Yeah,
that's a massive fish, man.
Yeah, it was a real cool fish.
Yeah. A fish like that eats a lot of pike, unfortunately. But
yeah, they're monsters. They eat anything that comes. They eat carps and brims and roaches. I think they will eat anything. Yeah.
Cool. What kind of bait are you using when you fish for catfish? Do you use lures or anything like natural baits?
Yeah. Natural baits is possible, like dead fish or some use live baits. But so we're using like a clunk teaser, which is I don't know if you know what a clunk teaser is, but it's like pretty much a heavy sinker, and it's covered with a small squid-like lure, which has small glass beads on it. It's followed by 2 single hooks or treble hook, and a single hook, mostly size 6 to 10. And for bait we use like big Canadian worms, and we gently place like 2 or 3 worms on each hook or the treble, and on the lower hook just 1 worm that covers the whole hook, because catfishes are fucking sneaky. Yeah. Sometimes they just pull your worms off the hook one at a time, and during that pulling process, they often hook themselves on the lower hook.
Really?
Yeah. We call it an angsthaak. I don't know. It's a free translation. It's like bear hook.
But they are really careful because they got those huge long whiskers on which they can, those tentacles, like almost like an octopus. They can. Touch and, play around with stuff before they actually take it. They're sneaky bastards. Yeah.
They're really sneaky. Yeah. They should name it something like an asshole hook or something. Because they're real assholes sometimes. Yeah.
That can be frustrating. Fish.
Pulling 1 worm off. Wow. Yeah.
All right. When you said you fish a lot on the rivers with a float tube. What's the what kind of safety precautions do you take when you fish on the river? Because I can imagine that some people think that it's a bit scary or dangerous to fish with a float tube on a river, especially when you hook a big catfish.
Yeah, because safety is, I think it's one of our main concerns while catfishing from our float tube. Because you're constantly scanning the situation because of the heavy current and the other traffic on the water. So we always make sure we keep an eye on each other and the environment. Yeah.
Is it
So
is it some tips you have for a new guy trying out the float tube for this? What should they think of? What should they, make sure that they have with them, or should they do in pairs? What's just the basic things that you can give to some new guy out there?
I think the most important thing is that you wear a life jacket.
Yeah.
And if you fish by night, you have to make sure you have some type of lights on your boat or something. So you can use like a headlight that sends out like multiple colors, so other people on the water are able to see you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be seen.
Those are the two most important things. I think light and life jacket.
So another question. When you get a fish of 195 centimeters from the float, how do you measure it? Do you go to shore with it and measure it, and how do you do that when you're in the water with the float tube?
Yeah, because it's not possible to pull that 2 meter plus in your boat. Yeah, you can try.
Yeah, but then you will probably sink or go fall over.
Yeah, because how heavy is a fish like that in the Netherlands when you have like a 1.95 catfish?
I think 70 kilos or something. 70 or 80. Yeah.
And then we're all talking and being enthusiastic about 20 kilo pike, and here you have a catfish that's just like 3 or 4 times the weight of that starting pike.
The most difficult part is like smile when you're taking the picture.
It's almost
your
like
arms are actually like screaming, let it go.
That's like deadlifting and with a smile. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So do you have any other places like the Netherlands and Spain which you have on your list, that if you could pick one place out of besides the Netherlands and Spain, which place would you pick if you want to go fishing for catfish?
Ooh, good question. I think I will go for the Po in Italy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've heard some crazy stories about that area. Yeah.
Or I will do something like Jeremy was always doing, go into Africa in some small village somewhere where they have like a small water where they catch like monsters. Something like that.
Like a lot of maybe 10 years ago, you had like that video from Iron Man or something that was called, and that was like a video with rock music underneath it. And then that guy hooked into like a 2.20 or 2.40 catfish. That was like before everybody knew that you could fish for them like that. And that was insane. And that was in Kazakhstan or something in like the Middle East. Yeah.
Sounds really... you're the Wikipedia guy of today, Sean. I like it.
I'm going to look it up. I'm going to rip that shit from YouTube and put it underneath this podcast.
So Tobias, running, as you said, you're a personal trainer. I saw on Instagram you have your private gym. Yeah. How do you manage your time to do this kind of fishing and being as effective and successful on the water as you've been, and also having a quite busy working life as well?
I think time management is very important. You have to make time for work, for your personal stuff, and to relax.
And how do you make that? Do you have any ideas or stuff that saves you time, or how you manage your time?
No, I don't think so. I'm a real old school type, so I'm very simple minded, and so I just make sure I manage my time so I can do the stuff I want during that day. I also have a little daughter who always wants attention and takes time. So I'm a very busy man, but it's fishing. So I think you can relate to that.
Yeah, of course. Everyone has the same trouble with, having so much on their plate and trying to, get as much out of their time. It's always the same case. It's just fun to hear people being successful and how they manage their time, having a job, having a family, and also, being out on the water as much as they can.
Yeah. I just make like small boxes, and every day has a few of those boxes. So fishing is Sunday.
Yeah.
And on the other days I'm working, and a real family man. So yeah.
One day a week. So if you only have 1 day a week, that's 4 times a month. Even the weather is good or you something comes up, how do you get the most out of those days? Do you prepare something before the Sundays? Do you check up stuff? How's a normal week going for that Sunday event?
Well, I think you have to plan a lot. You know, I think that if you're using a float tube, you know, to me, float tube fishing is like freedom. As I told earlier before, you're one with the elements, and it's a very unique fishing experience. But I think that using that float tube actually makes you a better fisherman, because using a float tube challenge you to overthink the location and tactics, because the biggest disadvantage is the limited distance you can fish.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know if you know, but, you know, I'm a kayak fisher myself, so yeah, I think the difference being in a float tube than being in a kayak is almost the same. It's not a, you have the same, you know, challenges in front of you. So I have the same mindset, and I look at it the same way. But it's interesting. Just keep on going, and how that affects your day of fishing.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty much the same. Fishing from a kayak or a belly boat, it's almost the same. So you also know that it forces you to concentrate on those 1 or 2 hotspots and really get to know the water, like certain structures or deep holes, weed beds. So I think that if you're a float tube fisher, and you have to plan those trips, especially if you only have one day a week. You know, if it's windy, it's windy. Yeah. You can't choose another day.
Yeah.
So you pick those spots depending on weathers, and you have to think, certainly in Holland, about catfishing. You can't just go outside and say, yeah, let's go catfishing and catch 1 or 2 or five that day. You have to think about where to go, which method you use, which method didn't work before. Or maybe, you know, like one hotspot can be good in the mornings, but in the afternoon it's complete different. You know, I don't, you know, it's almost the same as like pike fishing, and because you're limited in your belly boat, making that distance and making meters, and you have to overthink the whole situation. So I think that when everybody goes to bed at home, I just tend to keep up for like a half an hour and imagine where those catfishes can go. Is
that every day, or is it the day before?
Maybe some people will hear this and think, wow, that man is crazy, but I believe that it makes you a better fisherman too.
I think so too.
So you would say it's planning and reflection that's the key of your success. But Tobias, did you do float tubing before you started with this catfishing?
Yeah.
Did you do it a lot?
Yeah, I can say that I'm strictly belly boating.
Strictly belly boating. So would you say that has developed you as an angler to who you are today? Having those constraints and those challenges of not, you know, doing your meters and being facing the elements as you do?
Yeah. As I told before, because, you know, catfishing is to me, it's the best fishing experience there is. But as I said, it also limits you. So you have to think about the whole situation. You know, wind is everything, current is everything. Some spots are good in September but are terrible in October. So it's like a pike experience times 2.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you continue catfishing year round, or because?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that the best time to catch catfishes is during the warmer periods. So let's say April, May till October, November maybe. So that's where we peak at catfishing, and during the other months we just do what we loved the most, which is pike fishing and zander fishing. Yeah.
And that's interesting. If you switch from them, how do you target your pike and zander fishing from now then, gliding into another way? Is it belly boating again then, or how do you do that? When you're doing, December now?
I didn't hear you, buddy.
All right. As you know, doing that transition now, when it's December, going into pike and zander fishing, how do you fish for those, you know, in the upcoming colder months?
Well, I think we cheated like 3 or 4 times during summer and just went pike fishing, but So I love to target like big pikes using dead bait, but I think there are certain ways to fish for pikes, and I think that you guys can relate to that. It's just it has something to catch them with lures.
It does definitely.
Yeah,
Special.
That bait can be really effective, but nothing beats catching a good pike on a lure. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
So with Xander, do you jig for them? Because I saw a video on the Kingfishers YouTube channel that you fished them from the banks, but that was in the spring, I think, due to the fact that they were so shallow. But
True.
When you go for Xander fishing in December and January, do you go vertical jigging or casting? What do you do?
I think it's pretty much the same way as we target the bigger catfish. We just I think that we can say that we're pelagic beasts. Yeah, I love to target those bigger specimens, and they're often on the half water. So yeah. That's the way I target. It's the same thing as catfishing for me.
So you're running a Panoptics setup on your belly button.
Yeah.
does
okay.
Xander guy
work like part-time, so
Okay, Tobias, if we say if you have one day and you can only bring one thing except the belly boat, what would it be? Is it a specific bait, a rod? What is it that you would bring that you can't be without?
Like if we target catfish,
catfish from belly boat.
Or you have to have a few things to catch a catfish.
Take the most essential. The
most essential is that you have bait.
You have the bait. And what is the type of bait?
So we're using worms. Yeah, I think it's the best way to target big catfish. I know there are certain people who say that live bait is better, but
what is it with their worms that attracts a catfish? Is it that they make a lot, they get it's a big bait thing, everything is going around there, or what's the special thing with worms?
I think the maybe it's not only that you're using worms, but the way you're using those worms is very important, because that tactic, that skill that's required to catch those bigger catfish is more important than the bait, because we used to catch catfishes on bizarre baits. Like in one of my buddies caught one with, I don't know how to call it in English, maybe you can translate it for me, Sean. Speklappen. Pork chops or something like that.
Pork chops, specklappers and pork chops. And Felix is saying it quite good. Actually, you're Dutch improving, Felix.
Yeah, I'm doing well with hanging on with you guys once a week. I'm improving. You want to hear the Swedish name?
Yeah.
Fläskkotlett.
Fläskkotlett.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I've bought them a couple of times.
Speklappen, yeah.
So you're Google now.
Yeah. Speklappen.
I'm learning a lot, guys. Keep it coming.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of guys catching catfish on big pike lures, and I have no experience of catfishing. How do they do that when they use normal, like big McRubbers or something? How do they catch them?
Maybe jigging. I think there are a lot of Xander fishermen that are catching the catfishes as a bycatch. So I think you can pretty much do the same thing. It's just jigging or drop shotting. Well, I don't know about drop shotting, because the sinker is on the bottom and the catfishes tend to lay on the bottom. So I don't know if drop shotting is a good method, but I think it's pretty much the same.
But it's a way to target them as well. Is it someone in Holland catching them?
I only caught the only catfish I ever caught. I caught a couple, but I all caught them on lures. The first one I caught was on a big 12-inch bull. No, on a big.
On a speklappen.
On a speklap, on an artificial speklap, but on a pounder bulldog. And I trolled it like 1.5 kilometers, really slow, close to the bottom, and that was my first catfish that I caught. And I was intentionally targeting catfish. It was the population that escaped from the catfish farm that I talked about earlier in this episode.
Yeah, cool.
And trolling also on the big river, you know, big rivers and like large crankbaits, fishing them close to the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that lure fishing can also be effective, and most of the time we have a second rod ready, rigged with a lure and a heavy jig head. And if they're acting like real assholes and ignore our words after passing several times,
then you give them speklappen.
Then we give them speklappen. No, then we use like a rubber or something like that. Yeah.
That's cool, guys. I think it's time for us to run down. Do you have a final question, Sean?
No, thanks Tobias for your time, man. It was learnful and cool to have you on the show. And I think for our entire audience, which is bigger than only the Netherlands, it's really interesting to learn about catfishing.
Yeah, you can learn from all techniques and all experienced anglers. You have something to learn from everything and all of them. It's super fun. Thank you for joining, Tobias. I think maybe we can do a return if people still have questions that they want to be answered. We can see that from the YouTube video that goes up later or on comments on Instagram. Maybe we can have you joining in the future again.
Nice, man. Sounds good. Yeah, it's a real honor to be part of the show, and yeah, I'm real happy.
Super cool, man. You did great, and we're happy having you along. Sean, thanks for today.
You too, man.
Yeah.
Too.
As always, guys, don't forget to subscribe, give us a comment or something. You find us on all the places where you can find podcasts, but also you have my Instagram, Felix Frey Fishing, Sean with NL. She's still the Dutch guy with the NL ending, and Tobias. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, well, you can find us on Facebook. Kingfishers NL from Netherlands.
Yeah, Sean has told everyone about that.
It's the same thing. It's the same we use on Instagram. So you can look us up, Kingfishers NL, and sign up.
And also a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah. Well, YouTube we just started like making like a small series about fishing in Holland. And it actually stars the biggest fishermen from Holland, which Sean is one of them.
Oh yeah!
Sign up and follow us on the YouTube journey.
Okay. Yeah, so far cool, we had a bit of bad luck with shooting that video. One time I had some trouble with getting the boat out of a particular lake, which I won't get into any further detail, but what a horrible story was that. Any other time it was like complete shit weather, which is impossible to shoot video. So
it is what it is, buddy.
It is what it is. Okay. Guys, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being here. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Have a good evening, guys.
Bye. Arrivederci.